it until we landed that first association customer and then realized that actually everyone had the same problems. And I think some of the things that we took for granted, things like multi-currency, multilingual, things that as a European based business, despite my country's best efforts, we needed to, we saw an opportunity to work with sort of larger US associations that cared about things like internationalization and multilingual. The problem I kind of see with AI as it is at the moment is we have all these different systems that we're working with all these sort of silos of data. And now we have AI agents in every single one of those platforms as well. So although there are a lot of different choices from an AI standpoint, we're looking really to kind of sit in the middle between the kind of out of box offerings that may occur within the sort of common platforms, Dynamics, Salesforce, whatever it might be, or the other end of the scale, which is kind of building something completely custom. I think there's a line in the middle that says, we can make opinionated choices about how to solve problems while still having the kind of bespoke capability to do things, that individual people care about. So, yeah, that's turned out to, again, be quite a good choice. But I think it makes sense to think about putting AI within workflows or within the mix, So building an AI platform that is agnostic and has the flexibility to be deployed in multiple scenarios. So either through the front end, through the kind of common sort of chat interfaces, or via voice. So we're building voice agents that you can, put somebody through to on a telephone system, or you can have outbound calls being made by the voice agent. So if I've got a problem with people turning up to my events, I can call everyone and actually make sure they're coming or they're not coming. That's a super simple problem. So that's still chat, right? That's still a variation of chat. It's audio versus textual. And then you have AI, I suppose, from a workflow standpoint in terms of common heavy processes. Like, for example, I've got a membership application. I need to check all these documents. I need to make sure that the dates are right. I need to make sure certain rules are observed. So that's a natural evolution of that. But then I think also most people are using AI at the moment as a kind of a thin wrapper to kind of Copilot or ChatGPT or OpenAI, sorry, rather than using AI sort of behind the scenes. And so I think there's a very big difference in terms of what you can do with sort of chatbots versus we're using AI with vision to sort of really understand the knowledge within the organizations, turn graphs and charts back into raw data, but also training our own models as well. And that's really where it gets really exciting. I mean, I think one other thing I would say from a perspective of future gazing is I think this whole idea of running a large model that can tell you the kind of breeding habits of vampire bats and also do smart things in membership is illogical. From our perspective, we're saying we have a framework. The framework will evolve as technology evolves, and therefore you can jump in now, you can start adopting it. It will keep pace as things change. But I think iterating, finding a valuable problem and iterating. So we are starting really super small. I mean, the fact that it can do all of this other clever stuff is great. But if you have a really distinct problem, which is we have 100 people that spend all day, every day doing X, and now we can augment them with additional tools, that means they're more effective or they can be redeployed elsewhere in the business. I think finding non-science fiction like problems, right? Focusing on real stuff that is valuable, right, and then iterating out from there. I would say that just because something's interesting doesn't mean you should do it. And I think that's kind of that's the risk, right? That's the risk of previously, if I wanted to build something, I would have to think about the costs associated to doing it. A lot of digital platforms in the US will be very much, here's my beautiful website and here's my portal. And my portal looks like something that's been done by a 5-year-old. And ultimately, it's got sort of rough visual consistency, but also the experience of kind of building digital platforms at scale is very, very different to building a back-end AMS system. You're solving all manner of different problems from a scale standpoint, from a user experience standpoint, from a kind of security standpoint as well. So I think, a lot of the time, the problems are not that interesting, but they're still hard. and I think they get under kind of invested in a little bit. But I think, yeah, from a user experience standpoint, I think portals should be taken out and, shot with a cattle gun, right? They like, as a concept, I think they're flawed. I think the idea that as members constantly coming back to the site, it's like, okay, here's the website, and now we've gone to the portal. Like, it just makes no sense. It should just be a layer that people bump into, and based on who they are and what they're interested in, they should be accessing different stuff. One of the observations I'd have of the sort of the difference between the two markets is, whereas we have had the experience from the beginning of wiring in best of breed and wiring in best of breed systems and having the integration tax associated with that, of gardening and keeping things working and upgrades and continuous improvement budget and all of that kind of stuff. In the US, obviously, the all-in-one systems have been dominant. And now people are thinking, well, actually, can I tie in best of breed? And it's almost like you guys are going off on that direction, whereas we've been there and we're coming back the other way. And I think, to me, like, the architecture of sort of hub and spoke, of sort of, there are some core fundamentals that most associations do, and you need something that is kind of opinionated and does that really well. But maybe you've got a team that really love HubSpot, or there is a team that really love Salesforce for reasons best known to themselves, and therefore you decide you want to plug that in and have the flexibility to tie things in. But I think the problem I see with the kind of ease of like AI and the ease of integration is people thinking that actually integration is easy just because the technology piece of doing it is easy. But actually, so I think coming back to that point around what's expected to be in the system and what isn't, one thing that I still can't get my head around is the fact that in the US, people running deferred revenue reports doing that in their AMS system, right? Because they expect AMS systems to have all manner of finance capabilities, whereas in the UK, people use their finance system for finance stuff. One of the first rules is, don't use AI where you can use something else, because it's a terrible idea, right? So if what you are doing can be described as a series of decision trees with consistent rules, then you don't need AI for it, and you shouldn't use AI for it. I mean, I think the other thing is, there's environmental considerations, there's ethical considerations. One of the things that, from a research standpoint, I'm playing with at the moment is the fact that you can take an AI model, you can look at it, you can see the neurons that are firing when the model is answering questions if you use the right visualization software, and you can actually lobotomize the thing, take away capabilities, and then retrain it. So you can create models by either taking small models and training them, or by taking large models and lobotomizing them and effectively, seeing the effects of that. Obviously, the other considerations are things like profiling. So obviously, EU, GDPR, thou shall not profile members, or you shall ultimately have a way of being able to audit or justify decisions. Like, those things are really important. So one of the things for us is really about a framework to think about how to adopt AI. So from the first point, yeah, AI sprinkles. We can sprinkle AI throughout the platform, make it do Gen AI type stuff. So therefore, if the problem that I'm solving is, I'm taking certificates and I'm looking at the certificates and I'm deciding whether this looks real or whether it looks fake, something that is a true AI problem. And I think a lot of associations are document shovelers. Like, they ultimately move documents around as part of workflow processes and things like that. Absolutely, AI makes a lot of sense. But if rules can be described, if we're dealing with data in kind of like in sensible formats, and what we are looking to do is really run a workflow with rules, people are using AI for that, and they fundamentally shouldn't, because it makes no sense, and the likelihood of getting incorrect outcomes is definitely higher.